Attention Southern Nevadans.
Turn up that dial for some real talk about the issues that matter to us. From some of our valley's local leaders, business owners, and even the occasional elected official. Airing now on incredibly intelligent local radio stations and streaming worldwide at thenevadapatriot.com.
Welcome to the Nevada Patriot Podcast with Matt Sadler.
Thank you so much for that energetic and aggressive intro, outro narrator guy. It's going to be a hard act to follow here. I am Matt Sadler with the Nevada Patriot Podcast. Our show is called the Nevada Patriot Podcast with Matt Sadler. In studio today, I am solo. So we've got a lot of stuff to talk about, though, so hopefully it's going to be a very insightful show for you. So today on episode 3, we want to talk about things such as the general election coming up November 8th. So, boy, there's a lot to talk about with that. So we've got partisan races, which means, the different parties are represented, and then we have the non-partisan races. But I do want to speak some into that as well, because I don't think, although they're non-partisan, it plays a factor on what candidate you elect based upon the ideals that they believe in, they adhere to. Party politics does kind of enter into that realm, so please don't discount that. In addition to those two types of races that we have, ballot measures. Wow, so we've got 3 of them on the ballot this cycle. So when you see a ballot measure on a Nevada election ballot, I want everybody's inclination to be wait, pause, let's think this through. Once we start voting yes on these initiatives, and we need to do it oftentimes in back-to-back election cycles, when you let that genie out of a bottle, it is almost impossible to put the genie back in the bottle. So caution flags should be going up anytime. Anytime you're seeing vote yes on this, vote yes on that, please think those things through. So, with that in mind, I kind of wanted to go over some of these ballot questions. So you're going to see, and you probably see on your sample ballot that you've received in the mail, hopefully already, question 1 is one that is amending the Nevada Constitution to guarantee equal rights under the law, and that they shall not be denied based on race, color, creed, sex, sexual orientation, gender ID or identity or expression, age, disability, ancestry, or national origin. Pump the brakes. You guys got to really think this one through. Ballot questions like this, in my estimation, are vague and ambiguous. So you got to ask yourself, in this culturally quote-unquote woke era, where we're getting blasted by the entertainment, music, sports, and media elites, they're already conspiring to compel our words and thoughts. So do we really want to codify this weirdness, not only in laws, but into our actual Nevada Constitution? One simple answer, nope. No. Please vote no on that one. Brings us next to question 2. There's a lot of gobbledygook in this one as well. The meat and potatoes of it is raising the minimum wage here in Nevada to $12 an hour. Please, government, local government, state government, federal government, no, we need to stop meddling in our markets. Does anybody here in Nevada, I know this is rhetorical because I'm all alone, the dog is not even in my office here, so do we remember the eviction moratorium, the economic stimulus payments that we received in the past several months, all the cash grab freebies to businesses, and essentially paying folks not to work? Now, granted, I have friends and loved ones who needed a hand up during the pandemic. I was pretty fortunate, my family and I, and the type of industry that we're in, that although the pandemic did bring more challenges to us, we were able to weather a lot of those storms. We were, I guess you can call it recession-proof, pandemic-proof. Although it did sorely affect our industry in other ways, we were not hit as hard as some other folks. So a lot of my friends and family in the service industries, like in the Vegas area, places like that, I'm not beating on them or banging on them because they did need some help. But when you start multiplying the weeks and the weeks, and they turn into months and the months, and oftentimes people are making more money sitting on the sidelines than they would be at their jobs, there's just something sorely wrong with that. Recently, President, domestic energy production in our country, federal government meddling, shuttering it down, putting a stop to it. What's that doing to our energy prices? I mean, irrespective of the stuff going on in Ukraine, that has a lot to do with it as well. But doing that, having a negative attitude toward our domestic suppliers, our energy resources, whether it's coal, natural gas, oil, refining of the oil, it's wrong. And we see it now at the pump. I love how the news, especially coming out of Las Vegas, likes to tell us 10 days in a row, prices going down, 4 weeks in a row, going down a penny a week. What happened just like a week or two ago? I noticed that the gas went up at my local station by about 50 cents in a matter of 4 days. And not sure where the local news was on that breaking story, but you know, they want to tell us that for 12 weeks in a row, it lowered by a penny a week. Awesome. Thanks, news. So my attitude on the market when it comes to minimum wage and things is think very, very carefully before raising the bottom thresholds. Nobody, including myself, and I've been a minimum wage worker, or excuse me, I think I was making 15 cents more an hour than minimum wage, which to me was an important thing, to not have a job that paid exactly minimum wage. But you know, it was the 90s, and I was making, I don't know, I think it was $5 an hour, or maybe a tiny bit less. I don't recall, but I never intended on living on that. Spending the rest of my productive working years staying near that threshold of minimum wage. I knew that that was a job, or jobs in my case. I've had a lot of jobs in my life that were never supposed to be permanent, never really thinking that I would be at that level for years to come. They're starting jobs. Sometimes it's folks that are on fixed incomes and there's a limit to how much income they can make, so they choose to have jobs that just pay them, you know, certain small salaries so they can augment their income, do something productive with their time. Above all, what I think, when you raise the minimum wage too high, you have people that have life experience, skills, even college degrees, now competing for some entry-level jobs because the employers just cannot afford to scale their employment to offer as many jobs as they would have if the government wasn't involved in setting the rates. So what that does, as an employer myself, would I really want to entertain the notion of hiring a 17 or 18-year-old who has little to no experience, when maybe a college graduate, someone finishing up their master's degree, or, you know, somebody 35 years old that's had experience in the workforce? Who would I really want to hire in that spot? It's going to be the person with the life experience, or with the degrees, or with the achievements, the better resume. So over time, what does it matter if these young kids, or if the less skilled workers, the people that are still refining their skills, don't get a chance to get up and swing the bat and get a job? To me, I think that the market oftentimes needs to dictate what these rates of pay need to be. And if enough workers are out there that are qualified, that are good at proving their mettle, I think honestly, prices that employers are willing to pay for labor are going to naturally go up. So that's just my 2 cents. So question number 2, on raising the minimum wage to $12 an hour, for me, that's a solid no. And I would really hope that the majority of Nevadans would see it that way. So that moves us to question 3. And luckily there's only 3 on the ballot this year, because I think sometimes when they sneak 4, 5, 6 different ballot questions in there, we have the chance to overlook some. But this way we have at least a chance to look at each of these 3 more in-depthly. So this one talks about open primaries and what is referred to as ranked choice voting. I think this is a complete disaster. There is nothing wrong with the way that our primaries are run right now. In this proposed way, they're talking regardless of party, whoever it is, any candidate in a primary, and those are usually handled in right around June every election cycle. So the summer, around the start of summer, usually every other year, right? That the top 5 move on. So in theory, that looks like this is kind of cool. The top 5 basically can move on to the general election. So we don't have to sit there and not vote for candidates if we don't belong in that party. I think it sounds terrible. I don't want, as a Republican, I don't want other voters deciding which Republicans get to move on to the general election. I think that should be handled within the party. That we're Republicans. We get to choose by vote who moves on. So what does that do to independent candidates, nonpartisans, third parties? I think it puts them at a disadvantage. This is meant to be sold as something fair. But let me ask you this. If 5 or 6 well-funded Republicans and 5 or 6 well-funded Democrats are in that primary field, what are the odds that a third party, a Green Party, a independent American, libertarian, is going to crack into that field to make it to the general? I think it's actually working against the principles of democracy, quote unquote, that is looking to be met. And I don't think it meets it. I think it actually inhibits the ability of a nonpartisan, of a third party candidate, to actually have a viable chance in the general election. I think it kind of cuts. And plus, then they got to start spending a ton of money early on in the cycle and probably prepare for 2 elections, which it's expensive. I've ran for office, and when you're running in a primary and then a general, it's a lot of time, effort, and money. So, in a nutshell, vote no on that. I think it's fine to keep it the way it is right now. The reason, if you feel like there's a lot to be, gained to participate in a primary election, and then join one of the larger parties. Join the Republican Party, by all means. Come on board. There's room. There's room. We have a wide diversity of thoughts. We're all independent. We subscribe though to basic tenets of the party, which is a good thing. But there's room. There's room at the table. So I think voting yes on that question number 3 is very dangerous. It's no doubt going to cost. It can cost more money too. I think I read some of the points on the fiscal ramifications is that ballots would in general be longer now, even though everybody gets a ballot. If all these candidates for all these races are on the primary ballot, it's no doubt going to cost more money, time, and effort getting these ballots out to everybody every cycle, every primary cycle. So let's use that old adage that if it ain't broke, don't fix it. So this kind of moves us on to some other aspects of the election. So we have what are considered the partisan races. So this would be like the United States Senate, the U.S. House of Representatives, the governor, lieutenant governor, secretary of state, treasurer, controller, AG. That's the attorney general, state assembly, state senate, the assessor, clerk, commissioners, district attorney, treasurer, so on and so forth. So those are considered partisan races. So a lot of the folks that made it out of their respective primaries now are facing off in a general election. The nonpartisan races would be considered, like the judge races, so the Supreme Court, the appeals court, the justices of the peace in different jurisdictions. Also the University Board of Regents, that's an important one too, the school board. And I think the most hotly divisive and talked about race would be the Nye County Sheriff's race. So that's an intriguing one. So yeah, I mean, that's, you'd have to be just moving here in the last day or two to not be somewhat invested in that race or have some type of opinions one way or the other. So, and that's definitely one of those that's that in my estimation, although it is a nonpartisan race, it's important to look at your sheriff through a certain kind of lens to see what lens they themselves use when they view things such as the Constitution, such as the forms of government that are helpful. The fact of the matter is the county sheriff is so integral, so much more important, I think, than anybody would really realize at first glance. Is that, me being a constitutionalist, I have to look at the government and powers that be, very skeptically, because, knowing that absolute power corrupts absolutely, a little bit of power can corrupt. And when you're dealing with the size and scope of a government at the state level and at the national level that we're dealing with now, you gotta know that you have some type of protection, that you have a buttress, and your sheriff really can do that. So, in times of crisis, in times of the government, the federal government especially, encroaching on our individual rights and our state rights, it's super important to have a sheriff that you believe is fully competent, fully resolved, dedicated to protect your interest. And in my estimation, our interest is the slightest, lowest, most moderate touch of government on our lives is in our best interest. I think we govern best when we're governed the least by outside forces. I believe that the individual makes much better choices for their family than the federal government can, than the state government can. So we really need a sheriff that is going to uphold that. So listen to these candidates. They have meet and greets, debates of some sort. I mean, a meet and greet turned into a debate. Listen to their platforms, listen to their supporters, the people that are, their surrogates. Listen to the candidates, their perspective as much as you can, what they're on the record saying, and also holding them accountable. Have they do their lives match up to what they're saying? And I think there's enough out there that you can research adequately on both of our candidates here for sheriff, that we can come to the table with a good informed vote. So, please consider that. Please do your research, and don't take some of these votes lightly, because they're super important. You're talking the next 4 years of our lives here underneath, whatever sheriff ends up winning this election. It's super important. So, yeah, other races, the U.S. Senate, U.S. House, for instance, our governor, lieutenant governor, secretary of state, the attorney general, the district attorney. Just look at, I think it's, we oftentimes will say, I don't want to vote the party. I want to vote the person. I don't want to vote just because they have a certain letter next to their name. But, might I point out, if you just look, if you take a look at the different platforms, for instance, when I look at the Democrat platform, I find it extremely difficult to ever find myself, and this might have been different in my younger years when I think we had more, I hate to say patriotic, or even America First, I guess is a good term to borrow that from Trump. America First type Democrat candidates out there, Democrats that love the country, Democrats that were patriotic. Guys like John F. Kennedy come to mind. Even FDR comes to mind. Where you can actually, I think, engage in good discourse, that you can engage and exchange thoughts with them. I don't know that that's the case right now. The party, for years now, has been hijacked by leftist, progressive, you don't want to throw around the word Marxist, communist type people, but that is where the party has been gravitating. That's where it's shifting. Just was looking at their platform on their website. I believe it's democratic.org, democrat.org. So what was interesting to me is every 4 years, it looks like, they could put together the party platform on the national level. And, 2020 happened to be the last time that they did theirs. So coincidentally, before a huge election that we won't get into, but the 2020 general election, historians and philosophers, if we make it past impending World War III, we'll be able to write all about it. So, but this is just one of their things, that I wanted to point out, the preamble of their platform. So, in paragraph 2 of the Democrat platform, it says, when the American people go to the polls this fall, we will be choosing more than a candidate. Character is on the ballot in this election. The character of our president, yes, but more than that, the character of our democracy, our society, and our leadership in the world. So, when I look at that, I'm thinking, basically what I see this as, obviously it's a campaign push in some respects to go ahead and support, the Democrat nominee who would become Joe Biden. That the character of our president, I mean, how is this an upgrade in any objective measurement to any sane person out there? Come on, independent, libertarian, Ralph Nader, Green Party people, come on, character-wise, yeah, okay. But anyway, yes, more than that, the character of our democracy, our society, and our leadership in the world. Let me ask you, is our standing as far as world leadership as high as it was 2 or 3 years ago? Don't want to be cheesy and do the whole, are you better off now or then? No, I'm not going to do that. But in a sense, yeah. I mean, it's a no-brainer. I don't think anybody that you would talk to in Nye County, in Pahrump, in Las Vegas, would honestly say that they're better off now than they were 3 years ago. Barring some people who got lucky in the stock market, who broke through their career, their job, or got drafted into pro sports. Maybe those folks are better off now than they were if they invested lots of money in Bitcoin, and now they're bathing in money. Maybe those people are, but I think, man, honestly, that's not going to be what you find if you're talking to your neighbors. Our standard of leadership in the world, I think, honestly, we're a laughingstock to a lot of these countries. I think China and Russia I mean, you can, India, the Middle Eastern countries, OPEC countries, you look at how they view us now. I don't think our standing, I don't think we command respect. I think we're honestly, our policies, our leadership, our stances, our choices, it's laughable to them. I just find it ironic that was very high up in their preamble. And in their preamble, a few paragraphs down, talking about the pandemic. So in their preamble, the COVID-19 pandemic has laid bare deep-seated problems in our society, the fragility of our economy and social safety net, the risks posed by growing inequality, the impacts of racial and economic disparities on health and well-being, and the profound consequences of deepening polarization and political paralysis. Yeah, so when we're talking about the pandemic being politicized, I can't think of a more overt way of politicizing, capitalizing, exploiting what by their accounts is a devastating, horrible virus being transmitted, to politicize COVID-19, and then to equate that in and of itself is somehow indicative of our growing inequality, our racial and economic disparities. My oldest daughter, went through a book a few years back. She's homeschooled. It's called The Fallacy Detective, and I think sometimes the way that the logic and the assertions being made in documents like this, I don't know how many logical fallacies are there, but there's tons. I wish she was actually my guest. She'd probably be able to point out a couple of them. And she's by no means a right-wing conservative like her daddy. She definitely is an independent thinker. But even then, you could point to all these inaccuracies. And then Trump must be just, I don't know how much real estate he secured and bought in the heads and in the minds of the people who were responsible for writing this preamble. But he's mentioned in here a ton of times. Another one here is the bill has come due on the Trump administration's hollowing out of our public institutions, the sidelining of experts, the rejection of science. President Trump's dereliction of duty has caused the deaths of tens of thousands of Americans. My goodness. That's in the preamble to their party platform. It is that's kind of despicable. I haven't gone back and read a lot of the preambles from prior years. Like, I'm sure they did one in 2016 and probably 2012. You can just imagine them going after Mitt Romney. Mitt Romney, your terrible hair, your shellacked, slicked back. No, I don't think Mitt Romney, and before that John McCain, I would have commanded as much attention in their platform. It goes on to talk about, and we will end the war on government that has politicized our institutions. Well, there, ladies and gentlemen, I think you have a sharp contrast between the two parties, right? So in the Republican Party and in the framers of the Constitution, there was this healthy skepticism that the government was a necessary evil. And here you have codified in their document, in their preamble of the Democrat platform, we will end the war on government that has politicized our institutions. If we as citizens don't have a healthy skepticism and don't have a backbone to second guess our government officials, our institutions, to keep them accountable, to call them out, to vote them out when necessary, we're being derelicts at being citizens. So what I see in this party platform is kind of a call to obedience to the regime. To set, instead of self-reliance and American ideals and individualism and patriotism and hope and opportunity at the forefront, they want you to put on the pedestal the government and our institutions. You know, and this is, I'm a Bible believing, God-fearing Christian man, and that in my worldview, that is the only person that you would put in that position would be Christ, would be the God, the creator of the universe. Not have a document like this that I think pretty much overtly places the government in that spot to bow down and worship your government. Terrible. So, and then closing into their preamble, it says, "We must lead the world in taking on the climate crisis, not deny the science and accelerate the damage." So the priorities that I'm seeing early on in the preamble aren't really the priorities when I'm talking to folks. I'm the bell bondsman out here, so I talk to a good cross section of our folks in Southern Nevada. I mean, and it's not just one type of person. It's every ethnic group. It's every socioeconomic piece of the strata that I speak to. You know, whether people have a lot of money or little money, no money, need payment plans, or have money to pay, you know, $20,000 cash to the court, you know, in their wallet. You know, I deal with all these folks, and I would be hard pressed to think that if I told them what keeps them up, or asked them what keeps them up at night, what worries you the most in our society right now? Is it some of the stuff that you see in this document? You know, is it, my goodness, is it the climate crisis? Is it Donald Trump denying science? Oh my goodness. I think one of his biggest mistakes that he made was keeping those talking bobbleheads like Fauci up there as long as he did. You know, I think he played along more than I would have liked him to have played along with the reaction to this pandemic, our reaction that destroyed businesses, that hurt kids, that set people back with their mental health probably years, that stunted the growth of students in high school and robbed kids of their scholastic endeavors, that made graduations awkward, ruined dances, you name it. These kids were crushed under this, you know, and part of that was actually under, you know, Trump's watch, for right or wrong. He oversaw some of the stuff and allowed policy to come out of the administration that somewhat, you know, started that. And, you know, then Biden pushes everything into hyperdrive and accelerates us beyond repair. And then you have a governor like we've had that is just, I don't know what the word would be, complicit. Doesn't have your well-being in mind at all, you know. And ironic, but an ending on their preamble talks about education. In their preamble, "We must provide a world-class education in every zip code to every child because education is a critical public good. Democrats believe in universal early childhood education and affordable, high-quality child care. We will shut down the school-to-prison pipeline." Not sure what they even mean by that. School-to-prison pipeline. I don't believe, and I'm a product of the public school system, and I don't believe a lot of my friends, right after graduation, just looked at each other morosely and decided that, you know, this is the last time we're going to see each other. Hopefully we'll be sent to the same prison. I don't understand this idea that why there's this pipeline that they're talking about and why it's in their preamble. So they're talking about a world-class education in every zip code. would make education world class? It would be school choice, vouchers, an effective system where parents control the flow of money and it follows their kid to where they believe as parents their kids are going to succeed and thrive. So why is that notion battled? I mean, is it the teachers unions? Is it the structures at play with the school board in places like Clark County? Is it this idea that if we lose control at this level, it used to be, I've speak a lot to people a few years older than me, and we kind of bounce ideas off of each other, and I've heard from numerous people that, the old way that things were done, they would indoctrinate your kids in college, right? You send your kids to college and boom, that's where they change. But that's not good enough anymore on this leftist agenda. They need to get your kid early, and they're getting them in kindergarten. They're getting them in first grade. I mean, we're seeing it. They're able to consult with officials, to consult with Planned Parenthood operatives about abortion procedures outside of the parental knowledge. It's just ludicrous for their platform to fake and feint as if they're really concerned about your children's education, as if they're really concerned with lessening of crime. My goodness, every indication, and this is happening in Southern Nevada, and I get kind of second row seats to it, being a bail bondsman. I won't say front row seats, because there's people that probably know a lot more than I do behind the scenes of what goes on. But, bad laws get passed, unintended consequences happen in our state, and, we start to mimic policies when it comes to revolving doors at jails that we see in places like New York City, LA, Portland. You look at some of these towns, some of these cities elsewhere, and we see them, up to a couple years ago. We're thinking in Nevada, like, what's going on with these people? How bad is it in Portland? How can anybody live in Portland? No wonder everybody's moving down here. And we'll look at our policies now. It's exactly what was happening in Chicago and in Portland, now in New York City. The laws have changed, and I don't know if the people understand this, but if you have opportunities where people are going to jail, and I'm not talking about for a DUI, a wet and reckless, I get it. You spend the night in jail, go see the judge. He's going to probably let you out of jail. Don't do it again. You pay a fine. You take classes. You take, points on your insurance if need be, or you do whatever it takes to not have the points. I understand that you don't want to lock up misdemeanor offenders and just throw away the key. But we're talking people that are arrested with probable cause for felonies that are sometimes in and out of our jails in 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 hours. I think anecdotally about one person that I helped out, I remember he had just turned 18 years old and he was arrested for a misdemeanor crime and posted his bond, and they paid the relatively modest fee to get out. And I remember thinking, he's a young kid, made a mistake, and now his aunt or his grandmother, I forget, paid his bail premium money to me, and when we posted his bond. Well, I fast forward now for, now almost 5 to 6 years, and I've seen this kid get arrested about 5 or 6 times, and each time I go ahead and do a research on the case, I'm not seeing any phone calls coming to me. I'm seeing that he was just kind of released by a judge. So at least 3 times that I've seen. It could have been maybe he used another bail bonds company on one of his other arrests, but seeing him just being released like that, and what does that do? What does that do? I won't call him a criminal, but to someone who commits crimes, what does that do to someone? Does that sometimes incentivize them? I think it does. I think what it does, because you don't get caught every time you commit a crime. Obviously you don't. You don't get caught driving drunk by the police every time you drive drunk. But when you do get caught, I have absolutely no problem with there being a sting. When I was a kid, I knew if I was to drink and I got pulled over and I tripped all over myself and I couldn't count backwards by threes from 100 and I failed the test and I went to jail, that it would hurt. I could possibly lose a job. I don't think my parents would have bailed me out. Be spending a day or two in jail, or bugging my friends for bail money, getting the car out of impound. All that would be part and parcel, totally expected. And I would be fine with that. Because if I just get a wrist slap and was in and out and treated as if I was at the DMV and I was just they were going to get to me as soon as possible, sir, we'll get to you. Just be patient, just sit down and we'll have you out of here in no time. That's the impression that some of these offenders are getting from our criminal justice system. And I think when you talk about criminal justice reform, I don't equate that to just, let the jails out. Let everybody out of the jails. That'll reform everything. That'll make everything all better. We'll have no more crime. We'll have good citizens if they get arrested for felonies and get cut loose out of jail and get chance after chance and diversion programs ad nauseum, suspended sentences over and over and over again. I don't believe that's proper. And I know I've meandered off onto a completely off the rail here. I don't want to be running out of time with our show here, but I wanted to go over actually some more points on the Democrat platform, for instance, to find out exactly where their priorities are, to compared to what I consider to be normal. I hate to say normal because I have family and friends that are dear to me that are registered Democrats that have always voted for Democrats, been Democrats most of their life, and I think honestly the party, if they don't know it, this might be news. Breaking news, family. The party has left you. I don't know when it left you. It has probably left you many years ago, because look at the priorities here. So, raising wages, workers' rights, guarantee safe housing for every American, securing universal health care through a public option, eliminate racial, gender, and geographic health inequities. My goodness. I guess I'll eat these words if the next person I talk to, I say, hey, what are the top two things that keep you up at night that are really hard for you to grasp, and what's wrong with the world? And if somebody were to say, easy, racial, gender, and geographic health inequities, I will issue a heartfelt apology. But I don't think that's going to happen. I think what you're going to find is people want to have enough money to buy groceries. Have you noticed your food's getting smaller? Have you noticed that your choices are getting limited? As a kid, and maybe because I was really tiny and now I'm very large and well fed, but when I was a kid, I remember the cereal aisle being massive, large, lots of choices. You'd have like the same type of cereal, but the different brands that kind of had their own spin on the cereal. So you'd have all these choices, and now it's not even a cereal aisle. It's a cereal subsection. Tiny. Can't find anything that you're looking for sometimes. Maybe I shouldn't be eating so much cereal, but that's just one example. And coffee is getting smaller, more expensive. Everything I buy, it used to be able to spend $150 at a grocery store and have food for the family for 3 or 4 or 5 days at least. Family of 5, and not even close. We can spend $100 just trying to find food for basically 1 or 2 meals, it seems, and then we're back at the store again, or just spending insane amounts of money for just very basic food when we go to eat out. So I don't, that's a big problem. So if I talk to people, I'm not surprised if they tell me that, feeding my family, that's an issue. What else would be an issue to a normal person? Not even counting whatever their party is, irrespective of that. I would say crime, right? So that friends get their truck stolen off their driveway. They work for a non-profit here in town, and their truck gets stolen. Truck is used for way more good than personal use, probably. You're delivering beds to families in our county that need them. I'd say that's a concern that all neighbors have. The jerks running around town cutting out catalytic converters and selling them. The people buying them. Now that's a concern. I want to see some justice there. Water issues, resources like that. Being able to not go broke or having to choose between buying gas for your car or getting a good amount of groceries for your family that week. Formula running out for women who can't or choose not to nurse their newborn babies. I mean, that's an issue, right? Those are big deal issues. Safe housing for every American. In theory, that sounds good. I want safe housing for every American. I mean, this goes back to the chicken in every pot type thing, right? I mean, we can pull out a laundry list of things that we'd like to see happen and we'd love to have happen. But what is the government's role with that? What is the government's role? I mean, is the government's role to just give everybody what they deem to be safe housing? When you see massive public housing complexes in areas, is safe the first thing that comes to mind to you? Or is it, wow, I've got to drop my friend off over here and I'm not going to do it at night? I mean, honestly, I hate to say that, but that's the feeling that many people get. And I'm not talking about just me being a middle class person or whatever, working class, middle class, whatever you want to call me. I'm talking about, the folks that live there, that I talk to, that I have talked to in my life, that have lived in different cities. In Chicago, that's where my dad's from. So safety is not what comes to mind when you talk about when the government steps in there and guarantees safe housing. It is far from safe. Geographic health iniquities. Protecting Native American health is on their party platform. Securing reproductive health rights and justice. So what do they mean by that? So when you go to their section, actually in the platform, Democrats are committed to protecting and advancing and advancing reproductive health rights and justice. We believe unequivocally, like the majority of Americans, that every woman should be able to access high-quality reproductive health care services, including safe and legal abortion. We will repeal the Title 10 domestic gag rule and restore federal funding for Planned Parenthood. Bingo, there it is, guys and girls. That is a huge pillar to them. Restore federal funding for Planned Parenthood. So again, I would dare anyone to ask some of the issues that are plaguing the average citizens, male or female, that are keeping them up at night, that they're worried about. How many of them are going to tell you that we need to restore federal funding for Planned Parenthood or this country's going down the toilet? None of them, I think, are going to say that. It's really sad because further down it says, and the reason for that is not, they're not going to jump out and say because of the abortions that they provide, that provide the lion's share of the gravy on their gravy train. No, they're going to go ahead with their usual talking point, which provides vital preventative and reproductive health care for millions of people, especially low-income people and people of color and LGBTQ plus people, including in underserved areas. So there it is. So they want to, so that's the main thing, right, for reproductive health and options and preventative care and all that stuff. So whether it's prophylactics or, I'm guessing birth control is what they're getting at. Let me ask you this. So if you had a friend or a family member who had a severe drug addiction and they needed money for that addiction and you wanted to help them out, but you didn't want to, they were hard for money, they maybe aren't working, so you want to help them out, right? So you set up a GoFundMe or some kind of account that's not demonic and terrible like GoFundMe. So you set up an account and you give them money, but you say, hey, this is just for toothpaste and and milk and eggs. This is not to be used for your drugs. You promise? You pinky swear? You're not going to use this money for drugs, right? So we're going to go set up a GoFundMe, and it's only for groceries, for broccoli, for carrots, milk, healthy stuff. You set up that account, and you send them $1,000. And yeah, everybody, even people addicted to narcotics or alcohol, are going to need certain staple foods. They're going to need milk and water. You know, they're going to need certain groceries, certain toiletries and things like that, toothpaste. Would you be shocked if they sat there and spent 99% of that on drugs? Just get the cash? Well, that's how Planned Parenthood works. So when we talk about they serve, you know, they provide birth control or effective classes or things like this, they can do some good things. And by the way, it doesn't hold a candle to what most non-federally funded crisis pregnancy centers will do for women without the help of any taxpayer funds at all. They'll do those same things, and they'll do it better. And they'll give counseling. They'll do ultrasounds. They'll give reproductive help, advice, care. But for some reason, in the eyes of Democrats, only Planned Parenthood can do that. And they need millions of your dollars to support that. And I think that's hogwash. I think it's terrible. I think it's a lie. I think it's disingenuous. And I think in a broader sense, this platform, the Democrat platform, it's disingenuous. It's dangerous. It doesn't meet the priorities of everyday Americans, of everyday Nevadans, Southern Nevadans, my fellow Nye County residents. It doesn't help us. So you got to ask yourself, when you see, even in these nonpartisan races, and do a little research to find out how the candidates registered, because you're implicitly signing off on your party's platform when you join that party. I happen to really think that my party's platform is tops, is awesome, is good. I find very little in my party's platform that I disagree with, barring a couple things. I sign off on it wholeheartedly, 98% of it, at least. And I have to ask myself, if I was a registered Democrat, how much of this gobbledygook can I actually sign off on? I mean, how much of this stuff do most Democrats I know believe in or agree to? So when you talk about I don't vote the party, I vote the candidate. Well, you're going to vote for the candidate that implicitly signs off and legitimizes these positions? I think you really need to look at that. I'm not saying every Republican is a stalwart of our principles. My goodness, certain things should disqualify you off the bat. And I think being a registered Democrat in some of these important offices should disqualify you from getting the vote. Because in some regards, I'm thankful that the most important race in my estimation, the sheriff's race, got two fellow Republican candidates in that. And I think that should bring a level of some comfort to almost everybody in Nye County, honestly. Just compare the two platforms. I invite all the listeners just to Google it, check it out, find out the candidates' political parties, research the actual party platforms, and see if that can give you some kind of clarity on these types of candidates. And so that goes when you're voting for the county clerk, different positions like that. It's hugely important to find out where they stand on the political spectrum. Treasurer, for instance, super important. Look at the Republican ideals when it comes to fiscal responsibility, role of government. And do we want to have a more bloated government than we have? Do we want somebody that has a conservative bent on the principles regarding the financing in our state and the allocation of funds? then Michelle Fiore should be the candidate that you would choose. So those are just my 2 cents. Some folks would say, I don't want to tell people who to vote for. I want to let them make up their own mind. Now, if you really want to know who to vote for, all you got to do is catch me on the street, catch me in my office, see me at the jail at 1 o'clock in the morning or whenever I'm there next. And if you really want me to tell you who you should vote for, I will tell you who to vote for. I have no problem at all. I think you can read between the lines and see how I line up on the majority of this general election. But ultimately, if we have a fair election, if we have a transparent election, then I think we're all going to be better served. We're going to be good. And I think guys like Mark Kampf, our current county clerk, and he's on the ballot, if we can secure his election and get him voted in there, I think that priority of having fair and transparent elections is paramount to our representative republic, our constitutional republic. And I pray that we have transparency, that we have fairness, that we have leaders that are looking out for the good, that we have authorities in place like our sheriff's office, our law enforcement apparatus in our state and in our local governments to be buffers against evil, because I think God ordains that, and He's pleased by that. So I think we as voters, especially as me as a Christian voter, and any of you who are Christian voters, keep that in mind. Yeah, God's in control. God's in control. But God's in control of a lot of things. He's in control of our kids. He's in control. He holds the world in His hand, but He's given us responsibility. And even as a Christian person who believes that God is sovereign, that He's not going to allow anything horrible to happen in this world unless He allows it for His own reason, for His own purposes. But at the same time, He's endowed us with responsibilities, with gifts, talents, discernment to make these judgments. And I think we need to work for righteousness. And I thank you so much, listeners. I'm going to stop this now. I think I've bloviated enough. Thank you so much for coming and enjoying your time here. And if you didn't enjoy it, don't give up on me. Check us out next time. This is Matt Sadler, the Nevada Patriot Podcast with Matt Sadler. God bless.
You've just spent some of the best minutes of your life hanging out with Matt Sadler at the Nevada Patriot Podcast. Thank you for listening. Tell a friend and join us next time. After you catch your breath, check out the NevadaPatriot.com for more content, advertising opportunities, and to give listener feedback. That website again is the NevadaPatriot.com. Until next time, Patriots, stay American.